I did not do that, but great. All right. Well, welcome back, everyone, to iDTX. That was a little bit of a surprise. Was not expecting it to start broadcast right away, but here we are, and we're ready to go. Our next speaker for you is Matt Sustaita, and I did not get a chance to make sure that I was pronouncing that right, so please correct me if I'm wrong. And he is going to be presenting tips and tricks for developing world-class video. Before he starts, just want to let you know, if you are new to Zoho, we do not have a chat feature on this side of iDTX. So we are using our Q&A as the chat feature. So if you have any comments or questions, please drop those in there. Please rest assured, even if you can't see everyone else's comments and questions, we are seeing them. But you will only be able to see your own or anything that we drop in that Q&A section. So again, drop those comments, those questions. There's also a bar at the bottom that you can move around your screen if it's in the way of something. And there's a little smiley face there with all kinds of emojis that you can send reactions. So there's multiple ways that you can give your feedback here. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Matt. Very much looking forward to what you have to tell us today.
Yeah, today will be fun. I am going to throw a lot at you guys in a really short time, but my hope is you'll be able to take something away immediately and use it today, or if not tomorrow. Just a heads up, my family and I have been battling, I assume to be like a norovirus or some sort of illness going on. I'm kind of on the mend, but I'm still only drinking Gatorades or replenish some electrolytes and bread. So just a heads up if I start kind of fading as we go. So I think you can all see my screen. I went ahead and I want to start off with an aha slide. I like engagement. I like getting people interacting and doing something. So feel free to jump into that and check it out. We'll be using it pretty shortly here, but I'll go ahead and give a little shout out when we're jumping in there and you guys can jump over to it. So what we'll be covering today is all about tips and tricks for developing world-class videos. All right. So before we dive into that, a little overview on who I am. I have a background in education, as you can see from my MED. It's been about 7 or 8 years in the K-12 classroom working on various programs. I then moved into the tech world about 7 years ago and jumped into instructional design before I eventually kind of found my home in sales enablement. And I feel like that is my niche. That's where I plan to retire. It's where I'm going to live for a long time. But in that, I've noticed that I've kind of, much like you guys, you kind of start doing a little bit of everything and you kind of find your specialty. And so my specialty has mostly been in video production, creativity, graphic design. I'm getting there. I can't say I'm like as good as my graphic design counterpart that I pitched up over to. But I feel like it's something that's a strength of mine that I really enjoy doing and that it sucks up hours of my time if I'm not careful. So here's what we'll be doing today. So our big focus is helping you to build videos faster, better, and really wow your audience. And the way that we do that is really start with 3 big tasks. We look at developing a good video style guide. I know it can sound a little boring, and I'm kind of start with some of the foundational stuff right now because it's kind of where you have to start. If you don't have a good foundation, anything happens, it all falls down. So we're going to talk about designing a video style guide and what goes into that. We'll talk about some visual design tips and tricks that you can do. I'm going to assume most of you are using PowerPoint or Google Slides, or maybe that's what you receive from your client before you bring it into a Camtasia, or if you're more advanced in the Adobe Cloud. We'll talk about all those things today and how to kind of streamline and really build quickly and make it look great on the back end so that your customer, your client is super excited about it. And then we'll go into more how to use the cloud, the Adobe suite, and how to kind of work across your team. If you guys are global or if you're not, that can vary from organization to organization, but there's some invaluable assets to working in the cloud that I think I want to share with you guys today. So before we start into that, I want to pull from the knowledge in the room. I don't claim to be an expert at anything. I'm always kind of growing in my expertise and understanding. So I want to know, what do you guys think? Using our AHA slides, you can see it down here at the bottom, ahaslides.com. What components would you include in a guide? I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and transfer over to that. I know it might be a little tricky, so let's try this out. Right, and a new share. Ricky, if there's a way to share simultaneously without stopping, that'd be great. But if not, no big deal. All right, I'm going to go ahead and unlock this. Boom. So I want to pull from the knowledge in the room. You can find it up here. I try to drop it into a chat for you guys, but apparently that is a no-go for this group. Good, 30 seconds on the clock. Feel free to put in multiple responses if you feel like you've got some good ones you want to share with the world. Oh, okay. Did I accidentally send you guys my deck ahead of time? Because you're just pulling all my great information just like that. I guess I'm talking to the experts here. I love it. All right, in 4 seconds, and we're closed. Oh, sorry. I know some of you were trying to get in there last second. Oh, perfect. Okay. So we've got some good stuff. We've got our transitions, we've got our colors, our templates, fonts, outros. Good. All really great things. I think those are all components of a style guide that I recommend that you put into your guides and your development process. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and go back over to tips and to my presentation. Let's see if there's any other components we should include inside of ours to streamline our process and make our life much easier. All right, so back to our slides. So at a high level, the video style guide is all about giving you consistency. Now this job as a kind of pseudo video developer or maybe ID turned video developer was really simple when it was just me cranking out 20, 30, sometimes even 50. I swear I'm not kidding. Videos a month, you know, no problem. I can do it. One-stop shop, great. But then as my team scaled, we grew, we had more complexity, the org got bigger. I realized like, oh, you know, I'm seeing a lot of differences from the way I develop videos to the way my team develops videos. Not to say one's bad or good or whatever, it's just inconsistent. And that's gonna kind of water down the impact that you wanna have. And so a big thing about the big reason why you should have a style guide is to really build that brand consistency and to really control the visuals and the flow of your content so that if a SME or a subject is seeing one thing in one video, they're seeing the same thing in a different video or a different product or a different learning tool, what have you, that somebody else has created. It all looks like it's coming from one source of truth. And that brand awareness is what you really want, because that's really going to help your learners to kind of slow down and digest what you're saying, as well as reduce your time to develop, because you don't have to start everything from scratch. So let's dive into it. At a very high level, here are the pieces that you want to include. There are many more, including the ones that you have said here. I can't list them all. It would take forever, and I don't want to bore you guys with the foundational stuff. I want to get to the fun things you can do today. So high level, we want to make sure we have our settings, how everything's set up, our intros, outros, things that are already built, templates, etc. Have some control of your animations. I know that is could be a slippery slope to walk on because there's so many different ways you can do something. But if you have some control over guidance, how you transition between scenes or build animations, that's really going to help kind of reduce that cognitive load on your learner. So with that, you add in your assets and your modalities. We're going to dive into each one of these as we go. But I want to go ahead and start with the general settings. Now, something that I feel like slows down my process, I know this isn't something you always can control, especially if we're getting something from the subject, somebody that maybe is recording that's not a part of our video editing team, and they're making something like a webinar, or they're making some sort of recording on their own. If they don't use proper audio, if they don't like set their dimensions and everything well on their screen, you get like a really wonky video where you're trying to like put a circle into a square, and you're just kind of beating yourself over the head wondering, oh man, I wish I did this better. So a way that we found go around that is one, providing guides to your SMEs, which I won't cover in this, but two, really thinking about how your settings are going to look from video to video. So in my example here, I have exact setting of what I want from Camtasia and what I want in Premiere Pro, the two tools that we use in my current organization, how it's set up, what the features are, what you have to plug into the settings in the back end. That way it is at least consistent. So even if our LMS is to scale up or scale down, depending on what we have, we know we have a consistent product in the back end. So it won't really matter what the system or Web3, what the internet does with it when it goes into the, goes out to the world. So make sure you have that documented, make sure you have it screenshot and you can set it up. and make sure your team is aligned to what you're doing, that you're all in agreement so that you can move forward with a similar looking product. Intros, outros, others of you said it. Make sure you have all your intros. I know some are like kind of work-based and some are program-based. If you have those use cases where maybe it's your intro for a specific program that you have, make sure it's documented and make sure all your templates are in one place. I use PowerPoint for this or Google Slides, whatever you want to use, it's up to you. Some people like Word documents, whatever it is, just make sure you have it all documented and people know exactly where to go and it's up to date and it's the latest and greatest, so there's no confusion. They can find it, they can use it, and they can go. That also includes guidelines for how to set up and look, which is you'll see here. There are animations and transitions. Really want to look at and say, okay, what ones are approved? What are we using? Is it okay to use a fade on white, a fade on black, a fade to luminosity, a glitch? You know, really discuss it with your team and identify what works best for you, what works best for your content, what works best for your learners, and then stick with it. I know I've got to document these transitions and animations because I've worked with some people that put things together that I'm like, oh, or I put something together, I'm like, oh, this is gross, you know, and I didn't mean it to look so weird, but maybe it's just the way Camtasia or maybe the tool that I'm using makes it look. I just didn't like it. It kind of just irked my eyes. And you don't want to do that to your learners. You want them to have a nice, consistent visual experience and for them to come in and to not focus on what transitions or animations or what's going to happen on screen that's coming up, but really focus on the content and whatever they're supposed to learn from it so they can go and do their job better. So consistent animations and transitions save you a lot of time. Your assets, big thing. A lot of you touched on it. Fonts, colors. You can pull a lot of this material from your company's brand guide, or if you guys have one. If you don't, I highly suggest you make that, but that's completely separate from what we're doing today. A lot of what I did when I started building our video design guide is kind of build from the existing brand guide and said, well, what are they using, right? What fonts are approved? What colors are approved? What logos or things do I have to use? Because it's what the org and marketing said you have to use this. Make sure that's all pulled into your style guides that you know, so that you know that you're pulling from the one source of truth and including that in all of your assets. I definitely had situations where I had to go back and rebuild something because I used the wrong logo. It took hours of time and it sucked. So don't be me, you know, get this in your style guide and follow it. And then your modalities, something that I can't say I really thought about until I started shooting more advanced kind of webinars or shoots is how do I want this to look, right? So what happens when it's just one speaker in a frame versus two speakers side by side versus a speaker with a presentation? How do I want that to look? Everything should be documented. I don't do a great example over here because I want to visually show you what it could look like in terms of modalities, but think about like the settings, right? How do you want your speakers to be cropped? How do you want them to look? How big is that box that I have on my screen there? How do you set that and configure it? Make sure it's all snapshotted or put into your document so that or even a template so that the people that are working on similar products like this can go out and build it as well. So it's not coming through you and you have that consistent look and feel. All right. So now we'll jump into the next piece here. I know I threw a lot at you, but we're going to speed along because I've got a few more things that I really want you to apply today. Visual time saving tricks. So big top few things I want you to take away: simplifying your animations. We talked about that a little bit already, but really having that nice, consistent animations that you've all approved and you all like, and maybe have really certain ones for special use cases, but not going crazy. Don't just drop whatever you think looks cool and is fun in every single slide. I know people have that, I can't remember what it's called, but in PowerPoint, they have that one thing that makes it into a box and turns it around. It's all black. I hate that effect. I think it's the worst thing on the planet, but some people love it. Just make sure you guys have like consistency in what you're putting out so that everyone can feel good about it and it doesn't hurt people's eyes. Then you saw a little bit of what I was doing today, guiding the eyes. We'll talk about different use cases and what to do when maybe you get something that is just a noise machine and too noisy and you don't really know where to look. We'll introduce that concept. And then, of course, animating PNGs, another way to kind of like guide the eyes and tell the user where you want them to look. All right, so super briefly, we talked about simplifying your animations. This is an example of something that I would use inside my my guide. Essentially, I have our animations. You know, I'd go a step further and even show how to set it up in Camtasia or Premiere Pro. But basically, if my team and I have met and we've all agreed that, hey, we like the fade, we like the scale, move and fade, we like the move and scale, that call out box seems to be a big deal that everyone seems to like. let's just use that consistently and make sure the stroke is set at 6 for that specific box. We use this specific orange and we move on with our life, right? Don't have to spend all the time like trying to debate what we need to do and, look, seeing it in your final product and have to redo everything. Just get it out of the way, get the consistency there and move forward. So first use case, say I have a SME who's recorded their content, and I think we all have, right? Maybe it's one slide and they say, oh yeah, it's only going to be 15, 30 seconds of talking. And it's them talking for 2.5 minutes about God knows what. And it's just a mess. And you don't know what you're supposed to be looking at. Nothing's happening on screen, right? I've run into this, I don't know how many times in my years of doing this. And so a way that I kind of get around that, if I can't break up the slide into like multiple different, components or maybe change visually how it looks together, I can guide the eye by using like essentially graying out on the back end and building multiple PNGs, multiple slides of that one slide to make it look more animated and active than it really is. So let's dive into an example of how that can look. So if you see here, I've got that one badge slide. I know it's not the greatest example because it is pretty clean, but say the person's going through all 4 of those. And so instead of keeping it on nice and lit the entire time they're talking, I'll just go on the back end and duplicate that slide 4 different times and then find those 3 instances of where they're not talking. So in this case, badge number 2, 3, and 4, and just go on the back end of PowerPoint, bump down the saturation, bump down the color by going into your format picture and making it look like it's like grayed out and it's not being talked to, like it's not there anymore. When in reality, it's still there as a picture. It's just kind of like faded into the back end. And then I can take it a step further by going into Camtasia, exporting all 4 of those pictures as a PNG, laying it down inside of my timeline and dropping a fade in between each one. So that it looks like it's seamlessly moving along as the person's talking. Another example, another way you can do that is kind of graying it out. Here's an example of what we did before. I had my 3 slides that I'm talking to you now. Here's it in in G slides. You can see as I move along here, it's not animated. There's no transition between them. But if I added one, it'd be a nice kind of fade in between all 3 of them. Here's the same thing in PowerPoint. I'm going to go back a little bit because I know it seems like it's no different. But look at the really subtle differences between G slides, G here, and the eyeballs in the middle there, to my PowerPoint. I have a little more control over PowerPoint. It looks a little grayer, a little less there. You can play with the colors and the saturation and bump it back a little bit more if you want to be like less obvious. But I personally like using PowerPoint because I just have a lot more control over what I'm doing. But I know a lot of organizations might be Google Shops or what have you. So I typically just download it once it's like complete and signed off and they're not adding more to it. Download it as a PowerPoint and then start working it in PowerPoint on my end before it goes into Camtasia or Premiere Pro or whatever it is you might use. All right, and here's the example built in Camtasia. You can see I just exported those 3 PNGs, splashed in a fade in between them, right there in the timeline, in the bottom left-hand corner. Done. Looks pretty nice. Didn't really take me a lot of time. Didn't take a lot of work. In this case, I just duplicated that one slide 3 times, deleted the number 2 and number 3 that I didn't want, and then just let it build, threw it in the timeline, threw it in a fade, called it a day. Super easy, super simple. Here's the same kind of build with the gray one. Same concept, but I grayed out the 2 that I didn't want to display and kept the one that I did in the same color as always been. All right, I'm gonna take a little sip. Okay, so another use case. Say, for example, you have a SME who's speaking over some technical architecture. We get a lot of that in what I do now, just a lot of like really heavy IT focused stuff that I frankly don't understand. I don't think I'm smart enough, and nor will I ever be smart enough to really get this stuff. But I can work on my animation game and work on how it's displayed and how it looks to the learner to make it a little easier to follow. You can see my example here. Here's something I just pulled online, just another example of using your kind of gray out to like show the learner where I want them to focus. Another way you can do that, and I'll show you in the next slide here, is if you have maybe icons that your company has or PNGs or pictures that they use, you can duplicate that picture multiple times, duplicate assets of it, and bring in each asset to animate together. So here's a better example. I know this is an architecture that I pulled online, so I didn't have the official one, but I could break this down into all whatever 20 or 30 of those little blocks and reanimate them all, but that would take forever. So instead, here's a PNG example, that badge that I had before. Notice how I took my 4 components, which were the little mountains, the little clouds, the little trees on the side, and I kind of took them all, broke them into their each individual component, exported each one as a PNG or a picture, and then brought that into Camtasia. And you can see on the bottom right hand there, I essentially just layered them on top of each other, brought in the initial picture so I can match it and make sure it's almost 1-to-1 or close enough that nobody can tell. And then just messed around with the animation until I found something I liked. You notice it looks clean, it looks nice. If you have icons in your branded templates or your company provides it, chances are they probably are something that you can rip apart or duplicate multiple times and kind of crop out the things you don't want and bring them as little pieces that build. There's a lot you can do with this, but that's just one little quick hack that you can try out just to make your life, a little easier, or make your information and stuff pop a little more without doing a ton of extra work to find all the AI files and build it from scratch and all that. So back to our AHA slides. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. So given what we've learned or what you've kind of seen today, which of these can you make the most impact on your projects? I'm going to switch over to that. One moment. If I find a better way of doing this, I'll let you guys know. But for now, this is what we have. Boom. All right, 30 seconds on the clock. So the 3 things you learned, what do you feel like is going to be, the best for you going forward? Simplifying your animations, using grays or fades, or animating high impact pictures. Five seconds on the clock. Oh, can the third group make it back? No. Okay, it's all right. So it seems like the grays and fades. I love it. I'm all about simplicity, right? To the end user, it looks great. It looks clean. They're like, oh my gosh, you did so many great things. For me and my workflow, it takes maybe 3-5 minutes once you get really good at it, down to 2 or 3. Really easy, really fast, and really awesome to implement. It makes you look super professional. All right, back to our screens. I think I have one more of those, so thank you for being patient as we transition here. All right, last big topic, fast track production. Now I'll be up front. Everything I've taught before is kind of more for that beginner to intermediate level. So if you're a few years or a year or 2 into your video editing design game, then I'd probably say wait for this next piece. But if you want to see what the next piece can look like, stay with me because there's so many great things you can do with the Adobe Cloud. And I'm going to jump right into it. So the big thing that I want you guys to walk away with and think about is working on the cloud. What does that mean? What are the benefits to you? And then how do you use that to streamline production? So the biggest thing we'll talk about today is the Adobe Cloud and Suite, and then using templates in the cloud. I remember being at Adobe Max. It's a free event 6 months ago. And there were a few moments where I was like, why am I not doing this yet? It just seemed like such a no-duh moment that I almost kicked myself for not implementing it sooner. So here's an example of that. So templates in the cloud are great. Say you have some sort of consistent intro or asset that your company uses. Mine is really big on these little arrow things, it's kind of arrow, but I could easily just go into After Effects, because I've become much more proficient at that, or maybe you do it in Camtasia, whatever works for you. Animate that one piece, add in some faded text, bing, bada, boom. I've got a template that I can use that's going to be used for pretty much every asset that we have until branding changes what the intro looks like. And I've got something we'd use across my team and almost indefinitely. And so the benefit of doing it in a Adobe Cloud product is if I do that in After Effects and bring it as what they call a Mogurt into Premiere Pro, you can see on my screen here, I just put it into my templates. That's not what I illustrated here. I pulled that from Adobe stock, but I digress. Put it into my templates and I can have my team adjust the text. right? Maybe the title changes, the subtitle changes, the person speaker changes. Maybe I just want them to control those three things. And maybe I want them to control the colors too, or maybe the color of the arrow or the shape of it or what have you. I can basically set those parameters and say, you have control over this much in this template. And that's it. They can use it as many times as they want. And it's as easy as dropping into the timeline, adjusting the text or whatever they're trying to adjust, and moving on with their life. Same thing with pulling something or buying something from Adobe stock. They have a whole library of visuals, intros, outros, lower thirds, things that you could reuse for your purpose and change with your brand color. I'm not going to advocate for them because I don't work for them. I don't get any commission on this. So I just think it's a great tool. Maybe if you're not as proficient in Adobe Suite as you want to be, that's a quicker way to kind of get up to it. And the benefit of doing something like this is over time, you put a nice, really clean library of assets and tools that you can use across your team. Like I use the same intro for just about every project. I use the same lower thirds for about every project. I use the same outro for about every project. And all I do is drop it straight from the templates inside my Adobe Suite. Done. I'll adjust maybe the name of the lower thirds person and their title. It's over. It takes me a minute of work. And it is great. Everyone loves it. Haven't had any complaints. So I definitely recommend that if you're like doing a stretch goal for yourself, or maybe you are more proficient in After Effects, you're learning it, make sure you pick up Premiere, pick up After Effects, and start working and trying out doing some of those tools in the cloud. There are plenty of free resources on YouTube to learn how to use like MOGRTs or convert something into a MOGRT file and then pull it and use it. But I'm going to move forward because I want that to be the main focus here. And finally, delivery. I'm sure many of you heard this. If you haven't, Frame.io is a great tool that was recently purchased by Adobe. I'll be honest, I was a little hesitant because I know they tend to like put stuff on the shelf and forget it. So I hope they don't do that with Frame. But Frame is a great tool for just basically getting everything out of Word. I don't know about you, but when my SMEs would start reviewing my video and they put their timestamps in Word, and the second that something is deleted from my video because they didn't like it, maybe a segment of 10 seconds that was no longer useful, well, now my timestamp for the rest of it is moot because now it's all off. So unless I'm really paying attention and I, don't accidentally delete something that I didn't want to delete, or maybe did it prematurely, I'm screwed. Frame removes all that. It allows you to bring in all the comments, all the thoughts, all the ideas from the Adobe Cloud right into your Premiere Pro timeline, your After Effects timeline, whatever you use to build. And it's all right there and make your life so much easier. And SMEs love it because they visually get to see what's going on, have their little thoughts, just like it was a Google Doc or something, but for video. I don't know pricing or anything like that. You can look that up on your own, but last I remember, it wasn't too expensive. All right, so as a recap, things that you can do: develop a style guide. I know that's probably the most boring part of this, but in reality, the foundation is what's really going to help your house stay afloat whenever there are some changes or some unexpected speed bumps in the way, right? And it always happens. So develop a good style guide for yourself and your team. Use some of the visual tricks and tips and tricks that we talked about today to kind of speed your workflow. And then as a stretch goal, think about your 2-3 year plan. Start looking at Adobe Cloud. Start learning how to do some basic animations in After Effects. Learn how to convert that from an After Effects file to a MOGRT file, and just templatize some of the things you're already doing. That way you and your team can just be super quick, build really professional looking videos, and make yourself look really good in the process. So last question before I let you guys go here. I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm gonna reshare. All right, last question. So given what we talked about today, what action are you going to take next? Don't let everybody else's choices influence yours. Please be as honest with yourself. 5 seconds remaining. All right, cool. I like it. My last crowd said they want to make a style guide, but it looks like visual design is the winner today. It seems like all of you are in the weeds here and just trying to see the light of day. That is fine. Hopefully you're not cranking out 30, 40, 50 videos that I was cranking out last year. I do not recommend it. It was rough. Really quickly, Ricky, before you go, got one or two more things. So why do we do all this? I know you guys have seen this a million times before. It's not about getting time back. It's about allowing you to spend less time doing these mundane tasks and more time thinking about innovations and ways you can push your company forward. So now that I'm not taking all my time to like build all these animations and do all this stuff because most of my material is templatized, I can look at new innovative strategies to build into my workflow. I can find new animations and special use cases that would be really interesting. Right now, I'm working with more 3D effects and things that I never thought I would ever do because I was like, who has time for that? But because I made time for myself, I can start trying this and really push the needle forward just incrementally with everything that I deliver. With that, if you guys want to reach out to me, I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. I can't really say I've touched Twitter for a long time for many different reasons, but I'll leave it at that. But feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. And thanks for all that information. A lot to pack in 30 minutes. So I'm sure a lot of us will be going back to look at that recap, to slow some of that down as we learn how to pick up those tips and tricks in our own video production. So thank you so much. Matt had on the screen how you can contact him if you have any questions. Just a reminder, back in the hop-in, there is a place where some speakers are making themselves available under the sessions tab. So you can go there to chat with people. There's a networking space there as well. But for me, it's lunchtime. So I'm going to take 15 minutes to go take my lunch break. And hopefully you all get some rest time in too before our next session, which will start at 12:15. Thanks again, Matt. And yeah, everyone have a great day.
Thanks, Ricky. Enjoy your lunch.